Hey guys, I'm Papa Pete, and welcome to today's episode of the 125. The 125 is my YouTube show that focuses on the 125 original games that were released for the Intellivision System between 1979 and 1989. And it's a little bit different type of show because each episode actually consists of more than one video. There's this video, which is the review video, the video that talks about the history of the game, and then there's also the gameplay video, which will be a completely separate video, so make sure you check out that one too. Anyway guys, today's episode is one of the all-time classics, one of the very first games released by the Intellivision, Space Battle. Here we go. Before starting today's episode, I'd like to give a special thank you to the 125's official sponsor, IntellivisionCollector.com. Intellivision Collector is your one-stop for anything that you need for your Intellivision collection. With over 730 items currently listed on the site, you'll find not only lots of games, but systems and hardware, as well as repair parts, things like power and main boards, system shells, RF adapters, and even controller rebuild kits. Intellivision Collector is also currently in negotiation with several of the major players in the Intellivision homebrew community, so hopefully, one day soon, it'll be the primary location where you can find all the classic as well as the newest releases from all Intellivision homebrew creators. The site has had many recent additions and is updated regularly, so be sure to check out IntellivisionCollector.com.
Welcome to this hour's update. Top of the Galactic news is the continuing space battle on Galaxy 48. In spite of relentless attacks from an alien space armada, the mothership continues to hold her own.
Space Battle was one of the very first games released for the Intellivision system back on August 25th, 1980. And like most of the games back at that time, it was produced and created by a company that was hired by Mattel, APH Technological Consulting, and the lead programmer specifically was Hal Finney. Now, Hal Finney also was very well known for porting a lot of the Intellivision games over to the Atari 2600, and where they're released under the M Network name. Hal Finney also worked on a couple of titles for the Doom keyboard component. He worked on Conversational French, and he also worked on Jack LaLanne's Physical Conditioning. You know what really makes me feel old? I can still remember Jack LaLanne, who many of you probably have never even heard of. I can remember Jack LaLanne, one of the original physical fitness guys on television, coming on every morning on WABI-TV Bangor, Maine. Every weekday morning just before Captain Kangaroo. Let me tell you this, that wasn't yesterday. Finney was also the lead programmer for another very, very popular Intellivision title, Star Strike. But even with all these games behind him, these weren't his biggest claim to fame. Finney's biggest claim to fame came long after he left the video game world. He became an expert in cryptography, and he is one of the true pioneers in the Bitcoin cryptocurrency. Now, this is a long, very detailed, but very interesting story. But the creation of Bitcoin is actually attributed to an almost mythical figure. And that man's name was Satoshi Nakamoto. Hal Finney was the recipient of the very first ever Bitcoin transaction on January 12, 2009, when he received 10 Bitcoins from Nakamoto when he was in California. And to this day, rumors have always abounded that, in all actuality, Nakamoto was Hal Finney. Hal Finney was the true creator of Bitcoin. Finney always denied that he was Nakamoto. Sadly, Hal Finney, who was always an avid runner, contracted ALS in the early 2010s, and unfortunately he passed away from Lou Gehrig's disease on August 28th, 2014. Now, as for Space Battle itself, Space Battle was originally released in a red box as part of the Action Network for Intellivision. But shortly after release, they started getting feedback from people, and consumers found that the game was just a little bit too easy. At about the same time, they started making more and more space games to the Intellivision, so they created the Space Network. So to kill two birds with one stone, Intellivision decided to re-release Space Battle, no longer in the red box, but in a blue box, as part of the Space Network. And at the same time, they made it a more difficult version.
Floyd here claims to have had a close encounter.
Wayne, I saw
So we wanted to get his reaction to Intellivision Space Battle.
That's it. That's it. It happened just like that. There's a ship that took me in. Oh, and those explosions. I'll never forget it, Mr. Plinkin.
Thank you, Floyd. In Intellivision Space Battle, you may never come closer to a close encounter.
Ain't you listening? It's blue light.
In Space Battle, the object of the game is to protect your mothership at all costs from 5 alien armada which are closing in to attack. Now, in order to protect the mothership, you have 3 squadrons of 3 fighters each to fight off that alien horde. Now, there's 2 main views in Space Battle that you have to familiarize yourself with. There's first of all the radar screen, and then secondly, there is the battle screen. Now let's look at the radar screen first, because that's where you start each game. When you turn on the screen, you see the radar screen. The dot in the middle is your mothership. And what you can see around the outside are 5 alien armadas making their way towards the middle. They're trying to attack your mothership, and you can tell how many ships are in each one by generally the size, the number of dots in each of the armadas. Typically speaking, each armada is always going to consist of either 9, 12, or 15 aliens to start. Now, once you get into battle with some of them, if you leave them alone, you can change that number, but that's the way they always start. You'll also note that one of the armadas is purple, and the rest are white. The purple one is a selected one, and you can adjust which one is selected by hitting the alien key that's on your keypad. It's actually the enter button. Now, up until now, your squadrons aren't visible because you just see the alien armada coming towards your mothership, and you actually have to dispatch your squadrons out to attack the aliens. Now, in order to do this, first of all, using the alien button, you select the one that you want to intercept first, and then you choose the appropriate squadron button, either blue, white, or gold, and that's buttons 1, 2, or 3 on the keypad. Once you've dispatched your squadron, you'll see it appear on the screen in the appropriate color, and it'll start moving its way towards the alien that you'd selected. At this point, you can still dispatch your other 2 squadrons, but you can only ever dispatch one squadron towards one enemy armada. Now, as your squadron approaches the alien armada, once it gets to it, it'll start blinking. And once it starts blinking, you have to go into battle, and you do that by pressing the appropriate Go to Battle button on buttons blue is 7, white is 8, or gold is 9. And I just gotta warn you one thing. It'll blink for as long as you wait, but if you do wait, the computer starts fighting the battle for you. And the computer's nowhere near as efficient in fighting the battles as you are doing it yourself. In fact, you'll probably lose one of your fighters for about every 3 enemies that are destroyed. It's always better to battle yourself as opposed to letting the computer do it for you. As soon as you hit the Go to Battle button, the screen changes to the battle screen. And in this, you see a starry background with your gun sights in the middle. There's stars all through it of different colors, and you'll see aliens flying on and off the screen from all sides. In Space Battle, it's your gun sight that actually moves around the screen when you use your disc. It's not the other way around, where the gun sight is always centered and you fly around and try to get the enemies to the center. You're actually moving your gun sight. And this is a lot different than a lot of other space shooters, even other space shooters on the Intellivision. But I'll tell you this, it works very, very well. You aim your lasers, you move your gun sight using the directional disc, and you fire your lasers with any one of the 4 side buttons. The number of aliens left of that specific armada is shown in the lower left-hand corner, and the number of fighters that you have left of your squadron is shown in the lower right-hand corner. And those numbers are in the color of the appropriate color from which squadron you have in that battle. And even the screen border is also in that same appropriate color. Now, once you're in the battle screen, none of the strategy buttons that are on your keypad will work. You can't tell a different squadron to return to base. You can't tell a squadron to go into battle. You're stuck on that screen fighting against those enemy fighters until you leave that and go back to the radar screen. There's only 3 ways that can happen. And really, in the middle of a fight, there's only one thing you can do, and that's to hit the radar button down on the keypad, which is actually the clear button. The only other 2 times you go back to the radar screen are really pretty obvious. You go back to the radar screen if you blow up the last enemy fighter, or you go back to the radar screen if they blow up your last fighter and there's none left in your squadron. Remember though, if you do abandon the battle screen and go back to the radar screen to do something, the battle continues. It's just the computer takes over for you. And it goes back to that ratio, which really isn't very good, of approximately one of your fighters being lost for every 3 of the enemy. So use it wisely and use it as little as possible. Now, it's very obvious how you blow up the fighters. You shoot your lasers, 2 lasers come in from the side, and they go towards your gun sight. They don't go right to the gun sight where it is, but where it is at the moment you fire the laser. So you're always trying to lead the enemy fighters and keep your gun sight moving around the screen. A well-placed shot, if you take one shot and hit it just right, the ships that you hit explode, and they blow into 3 pieces. So it's even possible for one shot to hit 2, 3, 4, or even 5 enemy fighters in one shot. Almost like a domino effect. Now, up until now, we've pretty much just looked at how we attack the enemy fighters, but they're fighting back at the same time. So they shoot lasers at you, which look like 2 squares that come across the screen, and they're aiming for your gun sight. They start off as white, and when they're white, they're a long ways away and they're harmless to you. If it's over your gun sight, it's not going to hurt you. But as they get closer, they become actually deadly for you, and they turn red. And if a red enemy laser hits your gun sight at all, you lose that fighter. If it's the last fighter of your squadron, you return to the radar screen, and that's it for that grouping. But if you do still have fighters in that squadron, you continue with your next fighter. Now, once you've done any specific battle, you've taken out that armada, you can reallocate that squadron to do a couple different things. You can either use it to attack or attack a different armada coming at you. Or, if you want, you can just return it to base to fortify your mothership. And the buttons for return to base, as you see right there in your overlay, are number 4, 5, and 6 according to the color of the squadron. At the end of the day, the game of space battle is going to end in one of 2 different ways. You can destroy all of the enemy fighters, in which case you get the all clear, the victory horn goes off, and you've won the game. But if you can't hold them off and the alien armada get in and attack and destroy your mothership, you lose. In fact, even if they've destroyed every fighter that you have and you have absolutely none left, the game isn't over, because the ships, the alien armadas, will still work their way towards the middle, to attack the mothership, destroy it, and only once it's destroyed is the game finished. There's 5 different speeds that you can play Space Battle at. The first one you get by hitting the gold squadron key, and it's the slowest speed. It's beginner speed. Everything's slow, the gun sight moves slow, the enemy lasers move slow, you move slow, and even the things on the radar screen move slow. The next speed is medium speed, and then there's also fast speed, and that's the white squadron key and the blue squadron key. So once you've started, you've mastered the game at the slowest speed, you can work your way up little by little. The next speed up, after slow, medium, and fast, is advanced speed, and you get that by hitting the directional disc from the title screen. And it's a pretty challenging game, but it's not the fastest. The fastest is by hitting button number 4, which is actually the blue return to base key. And that is super advanced. The fastest speed of all. Now, one thing to realize in these 5 different game variations is not just the speed that changes. Something else that you have to think about is the action that goes on behind the scenes when you're in the battle screen fighting the enemy fighters. What's going on that radar screen? And in the beginning game, when you go into the battle screen, the radar screen stops. The armadas actually stop advancing towards the mothership. So it gives you lots of time to focus on that battle and go back to play the rest of the game. In the medium and the fast speeds, the radar screen goes at half speed, so the armada advance half as fast as they would be if you were on that screen. In the advanced mode and in the super advanced game, nothing slows down at all on the radar screen when you go into battle mode. The enemy armada keep advancing at full speed ahead towards your mothership. And I'm telling you, it's very, very challenging. And as far as that super advanced game goes, it is so fast, there are so many enemy lasers at you, it's a true challenge. To beat the game at super advanced speed, that is the ultimate space battle challenge. Although there's nothing too special in the radar screen, it is nice and clear as to what you have in the game. Yes, the dot in the middle is your mothership. It's just a dot. Okay, fine. Your own squadrons, when you dispatch them, they're easy to see. The colors are bright. You can see the blue, the white, the gold. It contrasts with everything else on the screen. The enemy armada are very clear, and you can distinguish which one you've selected. The purple is nice and clear opposed to the white. The size, the different number of dots in each one represents how big that particular armada is. That's really good to see. But, you know, when it gets into the battle screen, that's where Space Battle really hits its stride. When you get in there and there's a star field, which is really just done with different colors being used as stars as you move everything around them, it creates like a twinkling effect, even though it's not really twinkling. It works really well. Your gun sights are very clear, very easy to see, as are your laser shots. You know where they're going. There's no control panel per se for your fighter, but the two factors that you need most of all, there's no speed variations, there's nothing too fancy in this game. All you really need to know is right there in front of you, the number of aliens left in that armada, and the number of fighters you have left in your squadron. The last thing I want to touch about graphically is the enemy fighters themselves. They look great, twisting and turning all around the screen. And do they look sort of familiar to you? Yeah, me too, but I'm not going to touch on that quite yet, but I will in a little bit. The variety and the quality of the sounds of Space Battle is very good. The radar screen has a sonar beeping sound, which is regular, and it sort of adds a good effect to it. The only sounds on the radar screen are the sounds that make as the game's coming to a close, whether it's maybe the enemy fighter is getting in too close to your mothership, they're actually attacking it, and you'll get that alarm siren going off. And actually that sound isn't just on the radar screen, it'll start whatever screen you're on, but even if you're in battle screen, if somebody's attacking your mothership, you'll hear that alarm to let you know. The only other two main sounds on the radar screen are the endgame sounds. It's either the crash if your mothership gets destroyed, or the victory horn if you're successful and destroy all the aliens. The sounds on the battle screen are also very good. You have the ringing of your lasers when you fire them, and you have the big explosions of the enemy fighters blowing up. And then you have, last but not least, probably the sound you really don't want to hear, that downward spiral of enemy lasers hitting your gun sight as you lose a ship. I mean, when you think about it, these sounds are simply excellent for a game that was created in 1979-1980. Although your reactions and your dogfighting skills are what's going to ultimately win you the game, you can't beat the game at harder levels without quality strategy. First of all, don't send all of your ships way out to the extremities right off the bat to battle against armadas as they're coming in, because you only have 3 squadron, and if you get them out a long ways away from your mothership and they're taking part in battle, it still leaves 2 alien armadas to work their way in closer, and at faster speeds you may not be able to get those squadrons back in time to defend it. Plus, if you have all 3 of your squadrons out in battle at the same time, you can only control one of them. That means computer has to control 2 of them, and they don't do very well in battle. They lose one of your fighters for every 3 enemy ships that are destroyed. So you really don't want that to happen. You're better off to stagger them a little bit. Send one out at the most immediate threat, and then just as it's about to go into battle, just before you hit that go to battle button, dispatch a second, or maybe even a third, but at least a second squadron towards the second armada that's coming in closer. Then, when you go into battle, just as you're coming out of that battle, ideally, the next one is just about to go in, so you can more efficiently control your squadrons in battle. Following up on that point, once you're done a battle, don't leave that squadron out there floating in space. Do one of 2 things, either dispatch it to another alien right away, or hit the return to base button. Bring it back into your mothership to be used when you need it. Everything's moving towards the middle, so you want to keep your squadrons as close to the middle as possible for better defense. Now, as for the battle screen strategies, real simple. Keep moving. If you stay in one place too long, the enemy lasers will hone right in on your gun sights and you'll be a sitting duck. So keep those things moving all the time. The other main point in the battle screen is take advantage of those multiple explosions. When enemy fighters get close together, the more often you hit one, for parts of them to go off and hit others and have destroy 2, 3, 4, 5 at a time. So take advantage of those reactions to get rid of the fighters as quickly as possible. Like I said before, Space Battle was one of the very first games that Mattel made for the Intellivision. In 1980, space games were all the rage. Space Invaders had been out for a while, and there's all kinds of clones of different types of space games out there, but far and away, the vast majority were based on one thing, and that was high score. It was a scoring contest. And Mattel come out with Space Battle. Yes, I know they had Space Armada later on, which sort of mimicked Space Invaders. But this was their first entry into space. And they created a game that was so much different than other games that had made before. They created a game with an ending. They created a game that you could win or you could lose. And it was so revolutionary at the time to have something that you could win like that. Space Battle was actually one of the very first games that we got for the Intellivision System back in 1981. This is the copy right here that we picked up, the Sears copy actually. My brother-in-law picked it up. And I've told this story before, but it's kind of a funny, interesting story. He had ordered our Intellivision from Spiegel Catalog, which came out of Chicago or someplace like that. And of course, he was in Maine. And he went to Bangor, Maine that weekend, and while he was waiting for it to show up from Spiegel, he picked up 3 games. This one, baseball, and armor battle. And he brought them back, and we looked them all over. We were all ready to play them. We just couldn't wait for that console to get here from Spiegel. And we waited, and we waited, and we waited, and it was delayed. And finally, 2 weeks later, he said, to heck with it. And he went to the store down the street, and yes, it was about $100 more than it was for Spiegel. But he went and bought it, and we finally got to play Space Battle. It was certainly worth the wait, though. Do you remember I said a little while ago about, I asked you if the fighters in Space Battle looked familiar? Well, originally, Mattel intended on having the Battlestar Galactica license for their version of Space Battle. After all, another division of Mattel had Battlestar Galactica as a licensee for electronic games, so they figured they were going to be a shoo-in for Mattel Electronics to be able to put it into their video games. Well, it didn't come to be. Back in those days, the graphics weren't so incredibly detailed to make them have to make massive changes. So basically they just took the Battlestar Galactica name off of the game and released it the same way. So the similarities between the fighters in Space Battle and Cylon Raiders, it's still there. So yes, very much so. And on top of all that, of course, that's 40. There's even a video. There's even a video that was one of the original promotional videos pre-release of the Mattel Intellivision, which shows a mock-up cartridge of Space Battle. I'll show it right here with the Battlestar Galactica name. Really, really interesting. And even more interesting, just recently, just this summer, in the homebrew community, Intelligent Vision went back and re-released a version of Space Battle with the Battlestar Galactica license back in it. Now, it's not licensed, it's a very small homebrew game, but they went back and tried to sort of recreate what the game possibly could have been like had Intellivision been able to keep that Battlestar Galactica license. An absolutely fabulous game. Check it out online. You may be able to get a copy if you're interested. You definitely could get a ROM copy if you wanted to use it through emulation or through an LTO flash, something like that. So I highly recommend Battlestar Galactica Space Battle. Battlestar Galactica, for anybody who likes the original Space Battle, it's a great, great rendition. Overall, Space Battle is a game that I still love to play today. The original version, the Battlestar Galactica version, is just a lot of fun to pop in and play a game. The graphics in it for 1979 are absolutely fantastic. And the sounds, like I said, the variety and the different sounds they use, they're excellent. And frankly, it is one of the games that really brings me back to very positive memories from my childhood. I remember playing this game back when I was a kid and how much I loved it. So all of these factors taken into account, the great graphics, the fun gameplay, the good sounds, and of course the amount of memories that it brings back for me, I'm going to give Space Battle by Mattel Electronics a 9 out of 10 rating. Well guys, that's it for today's episode of the 125. Before I go, I'd like to put another special thank you out there to Intellivision Collector for being the official sponsor of my show. If you're looking for anything for your television collection, Luke is the person to see. Check out IntellivisionCollector.com. Anyway, guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with me today, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the 125. Take care.
Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. If you haven't grown up by the age of 50, you don't have to.
I'm Rick Reynolds of the Intellivision Aries podcast, and you're watching Papa Pete, the Old Guy Gamer.
What?